I recently overheard a discussion between two first-year law students, a discussion on a topic as old as law itself. They were discussing rather heatedly whether it is our duty to abide by a law, even if it's unjust, or whether we have a moral right to violate that law if we feel it's unfair. And I found myself thinking, is that really the alternative we face? This reminded me of a story that I'd like to share with you today. It's the story of a little boy named Mateusz. Mateusz and his family lived in Western Poland in a small town. They were a very typical Polish family in almost all respects, save one. They weren't Roman Catholics. They were agnostics. Mateusz's family wanted him to be raised in line with their system of beliefs and their convictions. This first became an issue during the last year of Mateusz's preschool. The preschool arranged for religious teachings during preschool hours within the preschool. And since Mateusz's parents didn't want him to participate in something they didn't believe in, Mateusz was asked to sit aside during these religious lessons. So all the other children participated in religion classes, while Mateusz sat aside and played by himself with toys. Up to that time, he was a very happy child. Now he started coming back home from preschool crying. And you can imagine how lonely, rejected, and shunned this little child must have felt. At the time in Poland, the law allowed for religion classes and ethics classes to be set up in a public school. Ethics classes were originally designed to be an alternative to religion classes for those who weren't religious. The system was designed so that at least 3 students had to apply to have either ethics classes or religion classes set up in a school. If fewer than 3 students wanted to attend religion classes or ethics classes, the school could refuse to set up these classes. Now, Poland, as you know, is a predominantly Roman Catholic society. And so not surprisingly, 85% of the public schools had religion classes set up in accordance with the Roman Catholic Catechism. Only 1% of public schools had set up ethics classes. Well, let's get back to Mateusz. After preschool, Mateusz enrolled in a public school and found that all of his classmates were attending Roman Catholic religion lessons. Mateusz's parents didn't want him to attend these lessons because they were agnostic and they didn't want him to participate in something they didn't believe in once again. So they asked the school director that ethics classes be set up. The school director replied, well, the law states we have to set up these classes if at least 3 students within the school district apply for ethics classes to be set up. Mateusz is the only child in the entire school district that has raised this issue at all, so we're not going to set up these classes. As a result, Mateusz was asked to sit in the hall or go to the library when the other children participated in religion lessons in the school. This immediately identified him as not being religious and not being Catholic. And it led to his peers mocking him, teasing him, and bullying him. They identified him as being different. But even Mateusz's report card was different. It was built up in such a way that it allowed anybody reading the report card to identify Mateusz as somebody who wasn't religious because he didn't attend religion classes. Mateusz's parents felt that this was discriminatory because it was an official document issued by a public school within the legal framework, and it disclosed Mateusz's system of beliefs, the convictions of his family, and they worried that this might influence the decisions of school educational officials who would later on make a decision about whether Mateusz would advance within the school system or not, which schools he would get into. So they changed Mateusz's school But the problem persisted. They changed schools, in fact, several times. But the problems were the same everywhere they went. They would apply for ethics classes to be set up, and the school administration would refuse, invoking the law. Mateusz's parents were convinced this was wrong, so they wrote to the Minister of Education and to the Human Rights Ombudsman. Both of these authorities replied, "We sympathize, but this is the law, and the schools are acting in accordance with the law." Now, you might think this is the end of the story. A citizen is unhappy with a certain state of affairs, applies to the proper authorities, the authorities react and say, "This is how the law works, everything is in accordance with the regulations." And the citizen comes to the conclusion, well, I don't like it, but I can't do anything more about it. Well, Mateusz's parents didn't give up. They filed an application to the European Court of Human Rights, in which they explained Mateusz's experiences and explained why they thought he was being treated unfairly and why the law and the practice of the Polish state violated his rights and freedoms. Their determination was so great that they attracted others to their cause. The non-governmental organizations such as the Helsinki Foundation for Human Rights intervened as a third party in the proceedings before the European Court of Human Rights. They received the help of excellent pro bono lawyers who sympathized with their plight. And finally, in 2010, 12 years after Mateusz entered the school system, the European Court of Human Rights issued a judgment in which it said that Poland had violated Mateusz's freedom of religion, conscience, and thought, and that the actions of the Polish state had been discriminatory. This judgment came when Mateusz was almost finished high school, but it was noticed by the media, and most importantly, it was noticed by the government, who realized they could no longer ignore this problem. As a result, 4 years later, the Minister of Education amended the regulation that had allowed the school system to refuse to set up lessons, ethics lessons for Mateusz, and that had indirectly caused his report card to disclose his family system of beliefs. Now, any student, even one student within a single district, if they ask for ethics classes to be set up, the school district has an obligation to set these classes up. Now, you may or may not believe that religion has a place in the public school system. You may agree or disagree that Mateusz's rights and freedoms were violated, but this is not a story about religion against ethics in the educational system. This is a story about the power of individuals acting to change laws which they feel are unfair. We are taught that laws, regulations, and codes, so long as they come from Parliament or another authority, are something we have to accept and abide by, that at best, we can hope to influence these laws by how we vote in democratic elections. In fact, one of the first things we learn in law school in continental Europe is a Roman law maxim that states, dura lex, sed lex, which means it's a tough law, but it's the law, implying that it's our duty to abide by these laws and accept them because they've been passed by the proper government authority. This doesn't mean that just because they've been passed by the right authority, it doesn't mean we can't question these laws. What we should be learning is to actively pursue the change of laws which we see as unfit. The laws in a democratic state may or may not we may or may not agree with them. And we are extremely fortunate to live in a society and in a time and in a state in which legal instruments are provided to us, not only to decide who will get to pass the laws, but how these laws should be enacted. We can organize demonstrations to make our voices heard. We can join non-governmental organizations to influence the legislative process. We can create legislative initiatives and force the government, force the parliament to consider these initiatives if we collect enough signatures. We can petition the Constitutional Tribunal, or, as Mateusz's family did, the European Court of Human Rights. Most importantly, though, we can exercise our freedom of speech to make our opinions about the law heard. This is by no means a call to anarchy. This doesn't mean we should go forth and break the law. It means we should use the democratic instruments which are available to us in order to influence the laws that we don't accept. A democratic state will provide its people with freedoms, rights, and instruments necessary to change the laws. But it takes a democratic people to use those instruments. Go forth and question the laws which you find are unjust.